Hey folks, hope you are well. It's getting a little chilly here in Michigan, so trying to get those last rides I can in. Fortunate to have 3 bikes, and I guess as we get a little older, is there some point that we need to consolidate? So I saw you, it's a bummer when it's towards the end of the year. You always wonder if this is your last fill up or not. I'm planning that not to be, but as I was getting ready to talk to you all about, consolidating, this old fella right here pulled up next to me and started talking. Got a big old tractor on the back of his bike and or back of his trailer, and just kind of started a conversation. And he said, "Hey, have a good ride." And I said, "Hey, you too." And I said, "Unfortunately, it's wintertime pretty soon." He goes, "Yeah, but I got to keep going. But it's the only one I have left. I used to have 4 or 5, now it's just this one." And I'm like, this guy must have been sent to me just for this video. Well, the colors are changing in Michigan, that is for sure. And I actually got a message the other day that just said, "Hey, dude, how do you handle having 3 motorcycles?" And I know we've talked about this before. And he goes, I know it must be expensive, and, why do you kind of do it? And, I've always just said, well, I had a bike for every reason. And they're like firearms. You should collect them. You shouldn't get rid of them, right? But he kind of had me thinking. And since I was almost out of gas on my motorcycle, and we had, let's see, about 5 miles before it was empty. Hopefully this guy will get ahead of me here. I should probably go get some gas. So I was thinking I'd come talk to you guys about it. So, and we just kind of chatted back and forth. And I found that my reasons were probably not as good as his thoughts on why I shouldn't have 3 motorcycles. Now, by the way, he was not criticizing, suggesting, saying, "Oh, look at you got 3 bikes," because you know what? I got a really inexpensive bike and a used bike, right? So it was just kind of a conversation, and I was thinking, and we were talking back and forth, I'm like, having multiple bikes does create some things you've got to deal with, right? Definitely 3 bikes that you've got to maintain. One. And if you're handy and can do most of that work on your own, at least preventive maintenance type stuff, and any type of minor upgrades that you want to do, it's not as bad, for sure, right? You're not taking it to mechanic to get every single thing done. If you do that times 3, that's problematic, right? So, and then there's insurance. Now, I'm a guy that I have Progressive insurance on my 3 motorcycles. I'm a State Farm guy, but State Farm can't touch Progressive for motorcycle insurance. And I don't know if you folks remember back, but I had somebody that backed into me when I was on the bike with my wife and just crushed my front fender. And Progressive took care of it. My rates didn't go up. I mean, it was a good experience. And it's really, from what I recall, cheap. I know I get a bill at the end of the year, and maybe it's not cheap. I think it's like $300 or $400 for one bike and $200 for the other. I don't know. I should probably know that. And I know a lot of people will take their insurance off in the winter, just leave kind of fire and theft on it. And I've never done that, and I probably should. I definitely would not do it for this motorcycle, because this is probably the bike that when it gets chilly out, good old Duke doesn't like the cold weather and doesn't have a lot of protection. I may take my KLR adventure bike out. I'm not so sure. You can see the leaves are changing. But I really could take off 2 of the insurances just for I think you can pause it for 6 months or so. So I'm like, okay, that probably makes sense. I should consider doing that. And in Michigan, and I chose to live here, but you really only ride 8 or 9 months of the year. So again, 3 motorcycles. Now, You also have to have a place to put them. I'm fortunate to have a big enough garage to put all 3 bikes in. It means that my truck has to sit in the driveway, but that's okay. As long as the bikes are good, I am good to go. But there's a lot of things that you got to do, and there's cost associated with that. There's also the old, which one do you ride? You can't ride them all, Well, that's crap, just so you know. I can ride all 3 of them in one day if I wanted to. And I do switch on and off. And then they all get probably the same amount of riding. It's kind of like having multiple kids. You give them all attention, right? So that's not a problem for me. And I really have no apologies for having multiple bikes. But I'm thinking, isn't that going to stop at some point? It's an odd place to take a nap. Isn't that going to stop at some point? Where you're like, okay, am I going to keep having all these motorcycles? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Will I start riding one less? The perfect example, and people have talked to me about it. If you follow the channel, you know I bought an adventure bike this year, a KLR 650 Kawasaki. Been a ton of fun. And I remember talking to a guy when I first was getting ready to buy this. I'm like, dude, I don't know. I don't know if I'll buy it, and then I won't ride it a lot. And he's like, you know what? Worst thing that happens is you ride it for a year, have fun, find out, and then you sell it next year if you want to, right? Now, that is not my plan. Starting to think, and maybe it's just winter depression coming along here in Michigan, that at some point I am going to have to consolidate motorcycles. As I age, whether it's as I have less time to ride them, as whatever it is, at some point I'm going to have to consolidate. I just wonder if any of you had that issue where you're either thinking of or you had to consolidate your motorcycles, or you just did because one of the multiple reasons that I just told you, and it doesn't necessarily always make a lot of sense. So I just am really curious on what you all do, and it really does have me thinking. And first of all, I had to take you guys down this road because, one, this is one of my favorite roads to ride on here in locally to me, but it just starts getting beautiful colors. The fall colors are not out yet, but they're close, as you can start seeing the changes. But somebody did ask me, okay, if you have to consolidate, what would you do? And if I had to go from 3 to 2, my Road King Classic I'm never going to sell, so that's never an option. And I honestly do not think right now that I would sell this bike, even though it's a heavier bike, it's a touring bike. I still plan on doing a lot of that, and I love it. If I decided to go from 3 bikes to 2 bikes, I would definitely make the KLR would be the one that had to take the brunt of it, unfortunately. But for right now, that is not my plan at all. But consolidation, I guess it's kind of like winter in Michigan. Just doesn't feel right at all. Be safe out there, folks. Check on a friend, and we'll make sure to see you on the next one. Bye-bye.